Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the bustling university dorm, laughter echoed through the confined space, attracting curious glances from passers-by. Reese, enveloped in a mixture of amusement and despair, lowered his gaze into his palms, trying to conceal his embarrassment. His companions, a triad of muscular football athletes with gleeful sparkle in their eyes, unveiled the torment they devised for the lost wager. "A transformation is in order," they announced, relishing their verdict. Reese's features twisted with a combination of dismay and acceptance as he grasped the reality of his impending fate. "Is this your idea of revenge?" he exclaimed, weaving his fingers through his voluminous hair. He'd been so confident in his analysis, practically boasting about his sports knowledge. Now his miscalculation was coming back to haunt him. "Fine," he muttered, resigned to his fate. "But nothing permanent. And no pictures." Devin grinned, already pulling out his phone. "No promises on the pictures, buddy. This is going to be too good." Reese glanced around the room at his 3 roommates. They'd been living together since sophomore year, surviving 2 years of cramped quarters, shared bathrooms, and the peculiar smells that accompanied 4 college guys in close proximity. He trusted them, mostly, but the gleam in their eyes now made him nervous. "When are we doing this?" he asked, hoping for some time to mentally prepare. "Saturday night," Marcus announced. "My cousin Alicia is coming over. She's in beauty school and volunteered to help." Reese felt his stomach drop. "You already told people about this?" "Just Alicia," Marcus shrugged. "She's bringing everything we need. Dress, makeup, the works." "Whoa, dress? I thought this was just going to be some lipstick or something." Curtis slapped him on the shoulder. "Nah, man. If we're doing this, we're going all in. Complete transformation. Don't worry, you'll make a beautiful woman." The room erupted in laughter again. Reese spent the next 3 days dreading Saturday night. He considered backing out multiple times, but the unwritten code between the roommates was sacred. A bet was a bet. Besides, the last guy who'd lost had to run across the quad in his underwear during winter. At least Reese would be fully clothed. Saturday arrived with unwelcome speed. Reese returned from the campus library to find his dorm room transformed. The usual scattered textbooks and gaming controllers had been pushed aside. Makeup kits covered his desk, and hanging on his closet door was a tight red cocktail dress that made his eyes widen in alarm. "There he is," Devin announced. "Our beautiful butterfly-to-be." A young woman with bright purple hair smiled at him. "You must be Reese. I'm Alicia." Reese nodded awkwardly. "Nice to meet you. I appreciate you doing this, I guess." "Don't worry," she said, sorting through her makeup supplies. "I'll make you look amazing." "That's what I'm afraid of," Reese muttered. Curtis handed him a beer. "Liquid courage, man. You're gonna need it." The next hour was a blur of unfamiliar sensations. Alicia insisted he shave closely, then applied some kind of cool cream to his face that smelled like cucumbers. She worked with focused precision, explaining each step of the process while the guys watched and snickered. "Your bone structure is actually perfect for this," Alicia commented, blending foundation across his jawline. "Great cheekbones." Thanks?" "Hold still," she commanded, wielding an eyeliner pencil. "This part is tricky." Reese complied, feeling vulnerable and exposed as she worked on his eyes. The sensation of the makeup brush tickled, and he fought the urge to sneeze or blink. Man, you're really starting to look different, Marcus observed, peering over Alicia's shoulder. Don't let me see until it's done, Reese insisted. The less he knew about the transformation process, the better. After the makeup came the hair. Alicia produced a long brunette wig from her bag, carefully arranging it on his head after pinning down his natural hair. The color's perfect, she said, adjusting the strands around his face. Really complements your skin tone. Devon snapped photos despite Reese's protests, circling like a documentary filmmaker capturing a rare phenomenon. Now for the final touch, Alicia announced, reaching for the red dress. Reese balked. I have to wear that? Where did you even get it? My sister, Marcus replied. She's about your size. Your sister is 5'4". I'm 6 feet tall. Alicia shrugged. That just means it'll be shorter on you. More flirty. After much protesting, Reese retreated to the bathroom with the dress and a pair of silicone breast forms Alicia had brought. The dress clung to his body uncomfortably, barely reaching mid-thigh. He felt ridiculous and exposed, certain he looked like an awkward man in women's clothing. When he emerged, the room fell silent. Holy shit, Curtis whispered. Dude, Devon added, lowering his phone momentarily. Reese stood awkwardly, tugging at the hem of the dress. I look ridiculous, right? Let's just get this over with. Actually, Marcus pointed to the full-length mirror they'd moved into the common area. You should probably see this. Reluctantly, Reese stepped in front of the mirror, bracing for humiliation. What he saw instead made him freeze. A stranger stared back at him. A woman with soft brown waves framing a delicately made-up face. Smoky eyes, high cheekbones dusted with blush, and lips painted a deep red that matched the clingy dress. The transformation was so complete, so convincing, that for a moment Reese couldn't find himself in the reflection at all. That's me? His voice came out in a whisper. Alicia appeared beside him, beaming with pride. What do you think? I went for classic glamour. I don't even recognize myself. Reese turned slightly, watching the unfamiliar woman in the mirror mimic his movements. The dress hugged curves he didn't know he could have, the breast forms creating a convincing silhouette. You need a name, Devon declared, still documenting the transformation. You can't be Reese looking like that. Madeline, Alicia suggested. You look like a Madeline. Madeline, Reese repeated, the name feeling strange on his lips. The person in the mirror, Madeline, smiled tentatively back at him. Curtis clapped his hands together. Well, Madeline, ready for part 2 of the bet? Reese tore his gaze away from the mirror. Part 2? What are you talking about? You didn't think we'd go through all this trouble just to have you stand around the dorm, did you? Marcus grinned. We're going out. Out? Reese's voice rose in panic. Out where? Somewhere no one knows us, Devon assured him. Murphy's bar across town. No college kids go there. I can't go to a bar like this, Reese protested, gesturing at his transformed appearance. That's the whole point, Curtis insisted. The bet was a complete makeover experience. Reese looked to Alicia for support, but she was nodding along. You do look amazing. It would be a shame to waste it. I don't even know how to act like a woman, Reese argued, suddenly aware of how he was standing, how he was gesturing. Everything about him felt wrong. Just be yourself, but softer, Alicia advised. and take smaller steps in those heels. The heels. Reese looked down at the black pumps Alicia had brought, adding another 3 inches to his already considerable height. I'm going to tower over everyone. Models are tall, she shrugged. Own it. An hour later, after much coaching on how to sit, stand, and walk with some semblance of femininity, Reese found himself squeezed into Devon's car, heading across town. The dress rode up his thighs uncomfortably, and he kept tugging it down. Stop fidgeting, Alicia advised from the front seat. You look gorgeous, Meline. The name still felt foreign, but Reese was starting to separate himself from the persona they'd created. Meline was the woman in the red dress. He was just temporarily occupying her body. Murphy's bar was mercifully dim inside, with most patrons focused on the basketball game playing on screens mounted above the bar. Still, Reese felt exposed as they entered, certain everyone would immediately recognize him as a man in disguise.
Relax,
Curtis murmured.
No one's looking at you funny.
That wasn't entirely true. Several men had glanced their way as they entered, but not with suspicion, with interest. Reese felt his face warm beneath the layers of makeup.
Let's get a table,
Marcus suggested, leading them to a corner booth. They settled in, Reese carefully perching on the edge of the seat, as Alicia had instructed. He kept his knees together, hyper-aware of how little the dress covered.
I'll get the first round,
Devon offered, heading to the bar. Curtis leaned across the table.
So, Meline, how does it feel to be the prettiest girl in the room?
Reese rolled his eyes, but found himself speaking more softly than usual.
This is the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life. You don't look uncomfortable,
Marcus observed.
You look...
He trailed off, studying Reese with a peculiar expression.
Different.
Devon returned with a tray of drinks and a surprised expression.
Dude, the bartender asked about you.
Reese nearly choked on air.
What? Why?
He wanted to know if you were single. Devon's grin was triumphant.
I told him I didn't know. You'd just moved to town.
You did what? Reese hissed, unconsciously leaning forward and then sitting back when he felt the dress shift precariously. Devon shrugged, distributing the drinks.
Part of the experience, right? Besides, free drinks.
Free what? Devon nodded toward the bar.
He comped your drink. Said to tell you it's from Rick.
Reese turned to see a man at the bar raise his glass slightly. Middle-aged, reasonably attractive, wearing a flannel shirt. Reese nodded back awkwardly, then turned to his roommates in panic. What do I do? Say thank you if he comes over, Alicia suggested.
Make conversation.
I can't make conversation with some guy who's hitting on me, Curtis smirked.
Why not? Scared you'll like it?
The comment hit harder than Curtis probably intended. Reese fell silent, staring at his drink. The situation was already bizarre enough without analyzing why he found the attention both terrifying and something else he couldn't quite name. The evening progressed with surprising smoothness. Reese remained mostly quiet, letting his friends carry the conversation while he adjusted to the strange sensation of being perceived differently. Occasionally he would forget himself, laughing too loudly or sitting in a way that contradicted Alicia's careful coaching, but overall, the disguise held. What Reese hadn't anticipated was the steady stream of attention from other patrons. After Rick sent the first drink, 2 other men followed suit. One even approached their table, introducing himself to Meline, and seeming genuinely disappointed when Marcus intervened, claiming to be her boyfriend.
This is crazy,
Reese murmured after the third man returned to his friends. Do women deal with this all the time? Alicia shrugged. Pretty much, though the free drinks part is nice. As the night wore on, Rhys found himself easing into the role. The initial discomfort faded, replaced by a sort of detached fascination. He caught himself checking his reflection in the mirrored bar back, adjusting his hair, even once subtly reapplying the lipstick Alicia had pressed into his hand.
You're getting into this,
Devon observed, returning from the bathroom.
I'm just playing the part,
Rhys responded, but even he could hear the defensive note in his voice. By midnight, Rhys had received 5 free drinks, 2 phone numbers, and countless appreciative glances. Despite the initial humiliation, he found himself experiencing an unexpected thrill. There was something intoxicating about the anonymity, about being someone entirely different for a night.
We should probably head back,
Marcus suggested eventually.
I've got an early class tomorrow.
Rhys nodded, surprised to feel a twinge of disappointment.
Yeah, good idea.
As they gathered their things, Rick from the bar approached their table.
Leaving so soon?
Rhys tensed, uncertain how to respond, but found words coming naturally.
Early day tomorrow,
he said, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal.
Thanks for the drink. Maybe I'll see you here again sometime,
Rick suggested, handing Rhys a business card.
I'm here most weekends.
Rhys accepted the card with a small smile, feeling his roommate's amused gazes on him.
Maybe you will.
The drive back to campus was filled with good-natured ribbing and laughter, the roommates recounting the evening's highlights with increasing embellishment.
Did you see that guy's face when Rhys crossed his legs?
Devon howled.
He nearly fell off his stool.
Rhys found himself laughing along, the tension and embarrassment of earlier fading into something closer to camaraderie. They'd put him through this ridiculous scenario, but somehow it had become a shared adventure, rather than a humiliation. Back at the dorm, Alicia helped Rhys remove the makeup and wig, explaining the process as meticulously as she had the application. Always use gentle motions around the eyes, she instructed, demonstrating with a cotton pad. The skin there is delicate. Rhys nodded, watching Meline disappear gradually from the mirror, replaced by his familiar features. The transformation back should have been a relief, but he felt a strange sense of loss as each element of the feminine disguise was removed.
So,
Curtis asked, when Rhys emerged from the bathroom in his normal clothes, face scrubbed clean.
Was it as bad as you thought it would be?
Rhys considered the question.
It was different,
he admitted.
Not what I expected. You were convincing,
Marcus said.
I think if we hadn't known, we wouldn't have been able to tell. Yeah, well, Alicia is talented,
Rhys deflected, nodding toward the beauty student who was packing up her supplies.
True, but you rolled with it pretty well,
Devon added.
Some guys would have been all stiff and awkward.
Alicia zipped up her makeup case. You were a natural canvas, she said. I'm impressed you didn't freak out more. After the roommates had said goodnight and Alicia had left with promises to share photos, Rhys found himself alone in his room. He should have been exhausted, ready to put the strange evening behind him. Instead, he found himself reaching for the small purse Alicia had lent Meline. Inside was the business card from Rick, along with the 2 scraps of paper bearing phone numbers from other men at the bar. Rhys should have thrown them away immediately. Instead, he tucked them into his desk drawer, an inexplicable reluctance stopping him from discarding them completely. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror and paused. There was no trace of Meline now, just Rhys, with his short brown hair and angular face. Yet for a moment, he could see the echo of her in his features, the potential that Alicia had skillfully brought to life. Just a bet, he reminded himself aloud. Just a stupid bet. But as he climbed into bed that night, his thoughts kept returning to the strange freedom he'd felt as someone else, the exhilaration of being seen through entirely different eyes. It was just the novelty, he told himself, the strangeness of the experience. Yet, as sleep finally claimed him, Rhys couldn't shake the quiet, persistent whisper in the back of his mind. What would it be like to be Madeline again? The next week passed in a blur of classes and assignments, the incident gradually fading from direct conversation. Occasionally, one of his roommates would make a joke. Madeline would know how to handle this. But the intense focus on his brief transformation seemed to be waning. On the surface, Rhys was relieved. He'd fulfilled his obligation, endured the forfeit, and life was returning to normal. Yet he found himself occasionally distracted, his mind wandering during lectures, replaying moments from that night. The look on Rick's face when he'd smiled. The strange power he'd felt when a simple gesture, crossing his legs, tucking his hair behind his ear, had drawn such clear attention. It was curiosity, he told himself. Nothing more. Anyone would be intrigued by such an unusual experience. Friday night, 2 weeks after the incident, as he'd come to think of it, Rhys found himself alone in the dorm. Curtis and Marcus had gone home for the weekend, and Devin was at his girlfriend's place. The sudden solitude felt both liberating and dangerous. Before he could second-guess himself, Rhys reached into his closet and pulled out the shoebox where he'd hidden the red dress after Alicia had insisted he keep it. In case you lose another bet, she'd joked. The fabric felt smooth against his fingers as he lifted it from the box. He hadn't been able to return the breast forms either. Alicia had waved away his attempts, saying they were extras from the beauty school. This is stupid, he muttered to himself, even as he laid the items on his bed. He had no makeup, no wig. The entire idea was absurd. Yet somehow, 20 minutes later, he found himself examining his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The dress still clung to his frame, but without the proper undergarments and accessories, the effect was nowhere near as convincing. He looked like exactly what he was, a man in a dress, not the elegant woman who had garnered so much attention. Disappointment washed over him, more intense than he'd anticipated. What had he expected? That some magical transformation would occur just by putting on a piece of clothing? He changed quickly, shoving the dress back into its hiding place, embarrassed by his momentary lapse in judgment. This wasn't him. He wasn't the type of guy who secretly tried on women's clothes when no one was looking. Except, apparently, he was. The realization sat uncomfortably with him throughout the weekend. By Monday, when his roommates returned, Rhys had nearly convinced himself that the entire episode had been a fluke, a strange byproduct of the bet, and nothing more. Then, Alicia texted him. Need a model for my final project. 3-hour makeup session. Pays $50. You were perfect last time. Interested? Rhys stared at his phone, heart racing. A legitimate reason to transform again. No need to examine his motives too closely. This was just helping out a friend, earning some money. What kind of makeup? He texted back, trying to sound casual. Full transformation. Glamour photo shoot theme. Professional photographer. Rhys hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Photos. Evidence. But then again, it was for a grade, for Alicia's program. That made it different from his private curiosity. When? They arranged to meet at the beauty school the following Saturday. Reese told his roommates he was picking up an extra shift at the campus bookstore, the lie coming more easily than he expected. This was just between him and Alicia, a favor for a friend, nothing more. The beauty school was bustling when he arrived, students working on mannequin heads and each other, practicing techniques under the fluorescent lights. Alicia waved him over to a station in the back corner, relatively private compared to the others. "You came!" she greeted him, looking genuinely pleased.
I wasn't sure you would.
Reese shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant.
$50 is $50. Right.
Alicia's knowing smile suggested she didn't entirely believe his mercenary motivation. So, I should explain the project. It's an avant-garde glamour theme, basically high-fashion makeup and styling for a photo shoot. Sounds elaborate. It is. Full contouring, dramatic eyes, the works. I've got a different wig this time, medium-length brown with caramel highlights. I think it'll really pop with the gold tones I'm planning for the makeup. Reese nodded, as if the technical details were his primary concern. And the photographer? My friend Jin. He's a professional, shoots for local magazines sometimes. Don't worry, these photos are just for my portfolio and final grade. They won't end up anywhere public. That should have been reassuring, but Reese found himself strangely disappointed. Part of him had been imagining more permanent evidence of the transformation, something he could look at later. Let's get started, Alicia said, gesturing to the salon chair. This will take a while. The process was similar to before, but more intensive. Alicia narrated each step, occasionally taking photos of the work in progress for her assignment documentation. Reese kept his eyes closed much of the time, focusing on the sensations, the soft brush of the makeup tools, the gentle pressure as Alicia contoured his face, the slight tug as she applied false eyelashes. You're really calm, she observed as she worked on his eyes. Most guys would be fidgeting or complaining by now. I'm earning $50 to sit still. Seems like a good deal to me. Alicia hummed non-committally. The last time we did this, how did it feel? Being Madeline? The question caught Reese off guard.
Weird,
he answered automatically. Then, more honestly. Different. Like I was playing a character in a play. Did you like being her? Reese opened his eyes, meeting Alicia's gaze in the mirror. There was no judgment there, just genuine curiosity.
Maybe,
he admitted quietly.
It was freeing in a way I didn't expect.
Alicia nodded, resuming her work. That makes sense. Sometimes being someone else lets us access parts of ourselves we keep hidden. I'm not... Reese began defensively. I'm not suggesting anything, Alicia interrupted gently. Just making an observation. Now close your eyes again. I need to blend this. The remainder of the makeup application passed in comfortable silence. When Alicia finally announced she was done with the base look, Reese opened his eyes to find a stranger looking back at him again. But not Madeleine. This face was more sculpted, more dramatic, with shimmering gold and bronze tones creating a luminous effect.
Wow,
he breathed. Just wait until we add the wig and outfit. Alicia beamed, clearly pleased with her work. Jin is setting up in the studio next door. We've got about 20 minutes before he's ready. The wig, as promised, was a warm brown with caramel-colored highlights, styled in loose waves that fell just past his shoulders. The outfit Alicia had selected was more tasteful than the red dress. a silky golden blouse paired with slim black pants and heeled ankle boots. "I figured we'd try something different this time," she explained. "More sophisticated." When the transformation was complete, Reese stood before the full-length mirror, momentarily speechless. The person reflected back was undeniably feminine, but in a completely different way from Madeline's obvious sexiness. This woman was elegant, poised, someone who might run a fashion magazine or an art gallery. "What do you think?" Alicia asked, adjusting the blouse slightly.
"It's amazing,"
Reese admitted. "I don't recognize myself at all." "That's the point of transformation makeup," Alicia smiled. "Ready to meet Jin?" The photography studio was a small room with professional lighting equipment and backdrop screens. Jin, a thin man with artistic-looking glasses, glanced up as they entered.
"Perfect timing,"
he said, adjusting a light.
"Alicia, your work is stunning as always."
"Thanks," she replied. "Jin, this is—" She paused, looking at Reese questioningly.
"Madeline,"
Reese supplied without hesitation, the name feeling right for this new incarnation as well.
"Beautiful name for a beautiful subject,"
Jin said professionally.
"Let's get started."
The photo shoot was unlike anything Reese had experienced. Jin directed with confident precision, guiding Madeline through a series of poses designed to showcase Alicia's makeup artistry. Initially stiff and awkward, Reese gradually found himself easing into the role, responding to Jin's encouragement and direction. "Chin down slightly. Perfect. Now look toward the light. Beautiful." There was nothing sexual or uncomfortable about the shoot. It was purely artistic, focused on angles and lighting that highlighted Alicia's technical skill. Yet Reese found himself utterly absorbed in the experience, attentive to every nuance of how he held himself, how the camera captured his transformed appearance.
"You're a natural,"
Jin commented during a break.
"Most amateurs are much more camera-shy."
"Madeline is full of surprises," Alicia remarked with a small smile. After nearly an hour of photography, Jin announced he had more than enough material for Alicia's project.
"Would you like to see some of the shots?"
he offered, turning his camera display toward them. Reese leaned in, breath catching as he scrolled through the images. The person captured in Jin's photographs looked so complete, so authentic, elegant and composed, with a certain knowing look in her eyes. It was him, yet entirely not him.
"These are incredible,"
he said quietly.
"You're very talented."
Jin nodded his thanks.
"I'll send the final selections to Alicia after editing. It was a pleasure working with you, Madeline."
The name sent a small thrill through Reese, even as he recognized the practical end of the session approaching. Soon he would need to wash away the makeup, return to being just Reese. "I can help you take everything off," Alicia offered as Jin packed up his equipment. "There's a private changing room through there." Reese nodded, suddenly reluctant to end the experience.
Could I see all the photos when they're done? For curiosity's sake."
"Of course. They're partly yours anyway." Alicia studied him for a moment. "This doesn't have to be the last time, you know." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you wanted to explore this more, this side of yourself, I'd be happy to help. No questions asked, no judgments." Reese felt a complicated mix of emotions at her words. Relief, anxiety, hope. "I don't know what this is," he admitted. "I just know it feels significant somehow." "You don't need to label it," Alicia said gently. "Just know the offer stands." Later, with the makeup removed and dressed once again in his ordinary clothes, Reese stepped out of the beauty school feeling changed in ways that had nothing to do with his external appearance. The experience had awakened something he couldn't yet articulate. Not just the thrill of transformation, but a sense of possibility he hadn't recognized before. True to her word, Alicia sent the finished photos a week later. Reese found himself returning to them repeatedly, studying the image of Madeline captured in perfect detail. There was something about her that felt authentic, despite being created from makeup and clothing, something true. His roommates noticed a change in him over the following weeks. A new thoughtfulness, a slight withdrawal into himself. "You okay, man?" Curtis asked one evening as they were playing video games. "You've been quiet lately." "Just stressed about finals," Reese lied, keeping his eyes on the screen. The truth was more complicated. He'd been spending his alone time researching, reading forums and articles about gender expression, about the spectrum of identity. He found himself drawn to stories of people who explored different sides of themselves through presentation, people who didn't fit easily into rigid categories. 2 months after the photo shoot, Reese received another text from Alicia. "Advanced class project. Full transformation again. Interested?" This time, he didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. When?" Over the next year, through a series of projects and assignments, Reese's explorations continued. Alicia became both mentor and confidant, guiding him through increasingly independent transformations. She taught him makeup techniques he could manage himself, helped him select a high-quality brown wig of his own, advised him on clothing that flattered his frame. Madeline evolved from a costume into something more integrated. Not a separate person exactly, but a genuine expression of aspects of himself he'd never had permission to acknowledge. Sometimes she emerged for just an evening alone in his apartment, reading or watching movies. Other times, when Reese felt particularly brave, she would venture out to quiet places, a cafe across town, a bookstore, occasionally even a restaurant. Each time, the world responded to Madeline as authentically herself, with no suspicion or second glances. The confidence this built was gradual but profound. His roommates never knew about these continued explorations. After graduation, they drifted into their separate lives, keeping in touch mainly through social media and occasional reunions. Reese sometimes wondered what they would think if they knew that their prank had catalyzed such a significant journey of self-discovery. 1 year after the initial bet, Reese sat in his new one-bedroom apartment, methodically applying foundation with the techniques Alicia had taught him. His movements were practiced now, the transformation more efficient, though still meticulous. His phone buzzed with a text from Devin. "Yo, remember that time we turned you into a chick? Still can't believe how convincing you looked." Reese smiled, glancing at his reflection, halfway between his everyday self and Madeline, existing in the liminal space between identities. "Some things change you in ways you never expect," he typed back. Later that evening, Madeline slipped on her favorite dark brown leather jacket over a simple blue dress, checking her reflection one last time. Her brown hair with its subtle caramel highlights fell in soft waves around her face, framing features that had become familiar and comfortable. She had dinner reservations at a new restaurant downtown, alone, but not lonely. The hostess would smile and say, "Just one this evening, ma'am?" And Madeline would nod confidently, following her to a table where she would order a glass of wine and enjoy her own company. What had begun as a humiliating dare had become something precious, a gift Reese hadn't known to ask for, a door to a part of himself he hadn't realized was waiting to be discovered. As Madeline stepped out into the evening air, She carried with her the knowledge that sometimes our truest selves are found in the most unexpected places, and that transformation, when embraced, can be the most authentic expression of who we've always been. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!